Okay, I'm just going to go through some quick testimonies because I think that's important as a backstory. So my background, got off kindergarten bus at a bar because my mom was a bartender. Early childhood up through preteen years, lots of sexual abuse and rape and in some really violent ways. And this resulted in me having really destructive patterns for long periods of years, a couple of decades. So I landed in Springfield, Missouri with nothing in 2008 and was suicidal. Tried multiple times to commit suicide, and it never worked. Finally started going to Mercy Hospital and saying, I'm suicidal, walked into the ER, and they would say, okay, come back here in this room. Gave me a sandwich, waited, sent me home. I'd been going to church for a year and a half at that time. I had decided to try to start following God when I got to Springfield because I had no other options. But a year and a half into going to church every week, Wednesday and Sunday, nothing had changed. And I get it. And I was mad, and I thought, this Jesus does not work for me. And then an old man came up to me one day at church, and he said, I don't want to offend your walk with the Lord, but if you are not doing this, I want you to spend 15 minutes in the morning reading your Bible and 15 minutes in the morning praying. And I want you to do the same thing at night, and that's an hour a day for the Lord. And I started doing that. Recently, like about a month ago, I shared this story with a Second Baptist College group, and the pastor's wife texted me yesterday and said, we now have a college student who is trying to read his Bible for 15 minutes every day after hearing that. So I want to remind you, just to insert this real quick, do not forget about the power of your testimony. Don't think that was just a small thing to me, but in my story, but a big thing to him, and something he was able to take away from it. So don't undermine the things that God has done in your life. But after reading my Bible and doing this praying, it was hard to do because I didn't understand it. It didn't make sense. I had to get humble and call people and ask them, explain this to me. And one question I had is, I would get so frustrated. Why does the king hide anything in the field? I'm assuming the king is God. If he wants me to find it, why is he hiding it from me? It was just like questions like that because I think very black and white. Like this is a water bottle or it's not. It's that simple. So in some of the things in the Bible, it has to be kind of translated to me because I think very black and white. And that made things difficult. When I started reading, if you love me, you will do what I command. I wasn't seeing, after a year and a half of following the Lord, my life was still a wreck. When I started reading the Bible, a year into that, there was a new problem. That problem was I was not seeing in church what I was reading in this book. It's just the truth. There's no judgment. That's an observation. I don't see it today, several years later. Or I see a little bit. So it says, go feed the poor. Go take care of the poor. We found out there were some poor people in Springfield. We started taking care of them, and here are these quick testimonies I want to share with you. We were serving some homeless people at Bill's place, and my friend says, Y'all know where you're going when you die? And we were not evangelists. And a guy said, I'm going to hell and I'm happy about it. And I'm like, well, sucks to be you, you know. He said that's his choice, right? And she elbowed me and said, you go talk to him. I'm like, I'm not going to talk. I barely saved myself. I'm not going to go talk to him. And she goes, you go and talk to him. Do you want him to go to hell? So I didn't know. I mean, it didn't seem like the greatest thing. So I went and talked to him, and I didn't know what to say. So I said, your father loves you, and he misses you. And this is very rough, burly, 60-ish something homeless man with a man just like that sitting right beside him, and the man next to him started bawling. 30 minutes later, I was kneeling in front of both of them. All three of us were crying and holding hands and praying. Over the years of serving homeless people, primarily my husband and I were serving 120 people a week, and we were on a little income. I think I was making $8 an hour, and he was making $12. And we were feeding, primarily out of our income, 120 people a week. And there were times we would serve usually on Thursdays and Wednesday nights. I would buy the groceries and make half the food and finish making the rest Thursday mornings. And there were times when Wednesday night we didn't have enough money. I mean, we had like enough food to feed like 8, but not 120. And 2 or 3 times when we didn't have enough food, there was a knock on the door at 9 o'clock at night. But just somebody showed up. And we didn't tell anybody we didn't have enough food for the next day and said, we thought you could use a box of food. Over and over and over again, we've seen these testimonies. We're in autistic, schizophrenic, 50-year-old homeless man living under a bridge. He had 6-7 coats on. Inside his coat's trash. So we brought him home to live with us. Now, he's working 40 hours a week, has his own apartment, it's fully functioning, doing amazing. It's unbelievable transformation. So my point for all of that backstory is this. What we're going to talk about this weekend is ending slavery, eradicating human trafficking. There's more slaves today than ever before in the history of the world. If that seems a little bit intimidating, if you don't feel qualified, God does the qualifying, God does the equipping, God does the providing. So get out of your head, stop looking at yourself, and start looking up, because this does not depend on you. This depends on the one true living God, and you will be asked this weekend to walk out your faith. If you own 10 shirts or more, raise your hand. If you own 4 pairs of shoes or boots or more, raise your hand. If you took a shower today with hot water, raise your hand. In the past 7 days, if you've eaten more than 14 meals, raise your hand. If you have a vehicle, raise your hand. If you've been to the doctor or dentist this year, raise your hand. Thank you. If you make more than $40,000 a year, you are in the top 1% income bracket of the entire world. Do you know who Jesus warns us about? Not the people. He doesn't warn us about traffickers. He warns us about the rich. If you are in the top 1%, and if you're sitting here in this room, there's a 99% chance that you're in the top 10% income bracket of the entire planet. How many here? 6 billion? Or is it 7 billion? And you're in the top 10 to 1%? So what does God say about rich people? Do you feel rich? Is there something right now you want to upgrade? What is it? Your drapes? Are you not happy with your car? What else are you going to add to your life that means nothing and has nothing to do with the heart of God? Meanwhile, miles from where you live, children are being raped. Let me say that again. Children are being raped. Now that you know, you are responsible. Martin Luther King said, it's not the people that do the cruelties that are the most guilty of the crime. It's the people that knew, the good people that knew and didn't do anything about it. Yesterday, I was talking to a lady, a believer, who's starting to volunteer with us. She's done some database editing for the UN, and she said, and we were talking about the statistics here locally of human trafficking. And she's like, it just blows my mind that this is here in Missouri. And she goes, I was telling my parents about this, and they said, shh, I can't even hear about it. I don't even want to know. When I hear that human trafficking, I don't want to know. Volunteer after volunteer after volunteer has said that to us. That when they tell their friends or their family, like, don't tell me. I don't want to know. What if it was your child? What if it was your child being raped and trafficked and sold? The average age of a sex trafficking victim is 12 years old, or 11 to 14. Just this past week, 150 children rescued from human trafficking, and they estimate only 1 to 2% are rescued. Is there work to be done? Lovingly, I'm going to ask you, what have you been doing with your time? That is so important. Do not leave here this weekend and go about business as usual, because I have no doubt that if we do not get involved, when we stand before the King of Kings, that we will be asked this question: why, when you lived, were there more slaves than ever before in the history of the world, and you were a silver dollar city in the lake? And those things are not sins. But we get carried away with things that have nothing to do with the heart of God. We found it Go 61 because I saw a 10-year-old girl dressed in hooker clothing in a prostitution setting in Springfield Square, 12:30 at night. I don't know that she was being prostituted, but it looked like it. I went home and I couldn't stop thinking about her. And whenever I can't stop thinking about something, it's just the Lord, I've discovered, saying, hey, pay attention to this. And I think this weekend God is saying, guys, pay attention to this. So when we found it Go 61, I just started meeting. I learned everything I could about human trafficking. I started meeting people at coffee shops, one person at a time in 2014. Sit down, let me train you what I know. Let me tell you what I've learned. And now there's 2 of us I would do that for 6 weeks with each person. And then we'd get another person to follow it. Let me train who I know. And then we were eventually training like 3 people at a time. At the end of the year, we trained 11 people. Yeah, start somewhere, right? This year, to date, almost 300 people have gone through training to learn about human trafficking. These people have included military, federal agents, law enforcement, RNs, doctors, high school students, college students, stay-at-home moms that just run the gamut. Unemployed, there is room for everybody in the battle against human trafficking. I learned something about myself this year that I believe is connected to the heart of God. I was in a dollar store this spring. I don't know what I was shopping for, but something simple, and I went in and got it. And there was this young, about 19-year-old black male who was the cashier. And while I was looking for what I was looking for, this lady came in with her small dog and pushing this dog in a cart. And the whole time, she is cussing this young man out, calling him every derogatory name you can think of and worse. And my blood boiled. I wanted to throw down with this lady, and I have never been in a fight in my life, but I wanted to take her out. I was fuming. I couldn't listen to it anymore, and I went up to him and I had my phone out. I said, I will call the cops. And I started calling. I'm like, you do not have to take this. And he said, she comes in here every week and does it. I'm used to it. He goes, I got this. He goes, I just let it reflect off of me. I'm okay. I said, I'll call. He goes, I'm good, ma'am. Thank you. So I left, and I was so angry. And I realized that's an injustice. And this is why I care so much about human trafficking victims, because it's an injustice. You cannot be a church and ignore the poor and follow God. If you are a person, a believer, a follower of Christ, and you ignore the poor, you are ignoring the Word of God. Have you taken care of the poor this year? I don't know anybody poorer on the planet than somebody who is enslaved. They own nothing that will not or cannot be taken away by their traffickers or slave owners. Person who is trafficked does not get to decide if they get a cup of water. They do not get to decide if they get to keep their baby, if they're pregnant, and a pregnancy usually is a result of rape. They don't get to decide if they have a baby, if that baby is sold. Let me ask you right now to think of something worse than your child being sold into sex trafficking. Think of it. What is worse other than eternal hell? That's the only thing I can think of that's worse. A person who is trafficked doesn't get to decide if they're going to eat. All the basic rights that you worry about, that's so far above what they think about. What do you think about? How you're going to put up with your coworker? Whether you're going to find God's calling, you found it. You found it. We're called to reconcile people to God. It's more than 30 to 35 million people in the world, it's just estimated. They have no rights. We started tracking in April numbers of prostitution ads, and let me say this. You have plenty of human trafficking victims in your area. If you live in this area, if you live in Missouri or Arkansas, in the Midwest, United States, overseas, they're everywhere. But we were having a hard time engaging people. I felt in Springfield like I was just ringing a bell and nobody was listening. Like the people right around me were like, what is that noise? I'm like, somebody pay attention, there are slaves here. And they realized we had to prove it. So, and they're like, no, it's prostitution, it's not the same. State Department estimates 89% of those trapped in prostitution desperately want out. Through our prostitution outreach of Go 61, we have spoken to more than 800 girls who are being prostituted just coming through the Springfield area in the past 18 months. With the exception of one, every single one of them come from sexually abusive backgrounds. They have followed the natural path for their life. There's been no intervention. You know, a month ago, there was a prostitution sting in Springfield. 7 people were arrested, 5 of them were girls arrested for prostitution. So we arrested ladies for something that they've been victimized in. Book and release, send them right back. So a few of those to their traffickers or just back to their hell that they went out of. We have one girl I've been working with who's prostituting in Springfield. I'm trying to find her a job. As of yet, I can't get anybody to hire her. 40,000 professed Christians in Springfield alone. Surely you would think one person would be moved to take a chance. There's progress that we can make. There's work that needs to be done. Girls like her need somebody to advocate for them. The 800 girls that we have spoken to who are in the prostitution industry, we asked them, what's your ideal career? Almost without exception, 100% of them have named one of 2 jobs. You know what those 2 jobs were? You know what they want to be? They either want to be a prosecuting attorney or a counselor. Do you know what that tells me? They want to be doing something else. Also tells me they want to put away the bad guys and they want to help the victims. And they want out. But those who are trafficked, not only are we not looking for them, we look away when we see them because they look like sluts, right? And we criminalize them for it and we judge it. We who follow Christ. Did you see what she's wearing? Cigarette hanging out of her mouth. Eyeshadow from the 80s. Taking the walk of shame. Come here, kids. Stay away from her. Let's go to the gas station across the street. Did you hear that music? How loud it was? People. Put this on Facebook. Right? That's what we do. Well, I never. Well, you better humble yourself. Because when you're doing that, it's not God that you're following, friends. What did Jesus have to say and do with people like that? We started tracking prostitution ads to prove to people who live here that human trafficking is happening here. State Department estimates, and we find this to be very credible and confirmed, the people we've worked with here, that 90 to 92 approximately of those who are in prostitution are actually human trafficking victims. In order for a person to be a human trafficking victim, one of three means must be present: force, fraud, or coercion. Think about prostitution for a minute. Can you imagine a prostitute who's not been forced or coerced or deceived? 14-year-old girl, trouble at home. Older guy's been watching her. He starts investing in her because her parents are not investing in her, which is more common every single day. Come here, honey. Just come with me. Buys her newest iPhone. Takes her shopping to the mall. He's like, your parents don't love you. They don't appreciate you. He's like, I'll take care of you. Let's go to St. Louis. Let's get out of here. Let's get away from here. Oh, sounds so good. 14-year-old girl. So they go. Get to St. Louis, puts her in a motel. I'm going to turn you out tonight. I don't know what that means. It means that I'm going to take a picture of you and I'm going to put it online. And the guys are going to come and pay to have sex with you. And you're going to please them. I'm not going to do that. He's like, oh, okay. So he makes a phone call. 5 of his friends come over, rape her, sometimes sodomize her, glass Coke bottles, beat her, burn her. You know, girls that we've talked to, 3 ways they've reported being brutalized the most: sodomized, burnt with a curling iron, some raped with a curling iron, hot, choked, punched in the face. So once he breaks her down, she does whatever he wants. And that's her life. She has 1% to 2% chance of being rescued. And what is the Christian community doing with their time and resources? So we started tracking these ads. Now I want you to follow me for a second on the numbers. If we're going to estimate, and I believe this is I'll stand behind this, pretty accurate, on the low end, that 80% of those, that's the low conservative end, in prostitution fit the definition of a human trafficking victim. We start counting ads every day. In April, Springfield, Branson, Joplin alone, we had 110 girls for sale each week in this area, just through one website. That doesn't count street prostitution. It doesn't count apps that are springing up every day where you can sell girls. It doesn't count other websites, just one website alone. It's a popular one. 110 to 130 in April, each week. July, 145. See the progression? In July, at 145 girls for sale a week, 80% of those human trafficking victims statistically, which I think we accurately can say that. And if 50% of human trafficking victims are children, with the average age being 11 to 14 years old, in July that put us with 57 children for sale here every week for commercial sex. Just wait, please. September, 559 girls for sale. That's not counting spam ads. The number is actually well over 600. We cut it down to 559 to not count repeat ads, any spam. So we want to try to make sure our reports were as accurate as possible. So at 559 girls for sale every week, you know what that leaves us with? 223 children for sale. That's children, but let's look at the adults too. I know Christine's going to talk about this tomorrow. We do care about children, right? We do. It particularly bothers me. We've worked with homeless children for years. We've had some of them live with us. There is something deeply disturbing about thinking about a child being sold and raped. And it's disturbing to think about a demand for children. But your adults that are being trafficked, their prices get lower and lower. They get the worse and worse customers. They get higher and higher till a lot of times they're discarded or dead. They are victims of child exploitation or trafficking or assault or oppression. And there was never an intervention in their life. Last night, Louie and I were praying before we went to sleep. We were praying that we wouldn't give up. We were praying, see, my hope, I will lay this before you. My hope is not in Go 61. It is not. My hope is not in this conference. If Go 61 stays with however many people we have in it now forever, or if it just fizzles out and a new thing comes along and people start caring about that. We were praying, we'll still keep doing this. Our hope isn't in this. My hope is in Jesus Christ. But last night, praying, justice delayed is justice denied. You know, Lane talked about me having so much energy. I would talk to you about that later because I disagree. However, I do have an urgency. This is where I come from right here every single day. I honestly, guys, I do not know if I will be here tomorrow. I don't. I don't have a diagnosis. I'm not planning anything bad to happen. But I don't know if somebody's not going to swerve over to my lane on the way home tonight. Raise your hand if you know somebody that died unexpectedly. Do you know you're going to be here tomorrow? I don't want to waste it on TV. I don't want to waste it on whatever that does not matter. Do you? Do you really want to waste it? When we could be agents of change and justice and restoration. I can't even think about the millions of people enslaved who have died waiting for you and I to show up. What will you lay down in your life that does not matter? What will you give up? You do know Jesus asks us to lay everything down and follow him. You can't be in love with him, in love with the world, and I fight it every day, guys. I'm just like you, but he is better. So let me ask you this. 23rd Psalm. Do you believe it? Do you believe it? Do you believe God's word? Do you believe he sets a table for you in the presence of your enemies? Do you believe that your cup overflows? That he leads you beside still waters? Raise your hand if you believe that. Raise your hand if you believe that's not just for you, but that's for anybody who wants it. Okay, let me ask you this. 12-year-old girl, been sodomized all night, raped by 8 guys before 2 p.m., beaten. Psalm 23 true for her? Does Jesus set a table in the presence of her enemies? Is she at peace? What's the missing link there? Does her cup overflow? Technically. But does she feel it? God has the message. And he asks us to be the message bearers. What will you do after this weekend that's so important that you wouldn't take freedom to a little girl like that? We will not save every life. All of us together, we won't save every life. But we will save lives, and we can end this. Human trafficking can be ended. Let me just picture this. Say you have a lake of fire. I'm not talking about Revelations. Normal pond of fire. Normal. I don't know what's normal about that. But there is a pond of fire. Do you guys, when you were kids, did you ever go down a mudslide into a lake? Did you do that? You guys know what I'm talking about? You go down mudslide into a lake. Well, let's just imagine you're going down. There's people, person after person after person, millions. There's a line of them going into this lake of fire. And you've got somebody right outside the lake as they're going in, pulling them out, and then they're handing them off to somebody over here who is taking them and doing the wound care, trying to heal them and save them and restore them. And then you've got a line of people over here joining arms on the slide, trying to prevent those from going in. What's most important? Those preventing, those pulling people out, or those restoring the wounded? What's most important? Isn't it all important? Isn't it all necessary? You're going to fit somewhere in one of those 3 things. You are either going to prevent, rescue, or restore. Let me rephrase that. You'll have an opportunity. I don't know if you will or not. Not everybody will be called to serve or give or help on the same level, but make no mistake. This book calls you to it. And I do believe we'll have to answer for it if we don't. We are called to help the poor. We are counterfeit Christians if we do not. And there's nobody poorer in the world than a slave who has no rights. We've worked with homeless people enough. They have a right to go into a shelter. They have a right to go to a food bank. They have a right to say no. They have a right to go to a hospital. This 2 weeks ago, we worked with a Vietnamese girl, an American husband. So we went to Vietnam and brought her back, just married her. And it's common over there that the families will pay $35,000 to the men for taking their daughters, the ones who can afford it. To them, it can be an act of love. We're trying to send them to a better place. But this girl's family is very poor. So her American husband, who lives right here in your county, brought her back. For 7 years, she hasn't spoken English. She's just now learning. She's had no family. I can't go into more specifics, but she has been violently assaulted. You know what she told us? I just like to go to the mall sometime. Been out one time to do that in 7 years. Desperately longing that this won't be my life anymore. She was raped. She's a tiny woman with an object so large that it wouldn't come back out of her. It had to be forcibly, horribly removed. Do you know that's God's daughter? Do you know that you but have to begin looking? It's just like how I began. You have to go say your Father loves you. You have to take that step. You don't wait to God to point him out. You take the step forward. You don't wait until you have the provisions. You take the step forward. You don't wait until the plan is finalized. You step into it because it's God's plan. You don't have to figure it out. He's got it figured out. You just have to join him. But guess what? You got to lay down everything that's not important in order to do it. This is an invitation. It's an invitation. Lives can be saved and restored. Lives can be changed. Our truck stop outreach team witnessed a 13-year-old girl. We're guessing she's 13. They reported she's this big to this big. They guessed her to be between 10 and 13, so she could be younger. 10:30 at night at a nearby truck stop. We send teams out, and they just go and they sit in their vehicles, and all they do is watch for children in a probable child trafficking situation, and they make reports. They take down license plates, numbers, and descriptions, and they report, and they document and assess and collaborate with federal agents so these children can be saved. Because every day children and adults are trafficked through truck stops. And this 13-year-old girl, 10:30 at night, was coming out of the truck stop convenience store with a man about 60 years old. He's dressed scantily, walked to the big line of trucks, got into the semi with the man, was in the semi for 10 minutes, and then she got out alone, started walking down the line of trucks. The van turned on its lights. She got in the van, drove off. Textbook case of child sex trafficking right here. That's just one night that our team was there. There's been other situations too that's come in. So our team members were able to report the license plates, number, and description of the van, of the semi, and potentially what justice can look like in this situation is if that truck driver is buying children for sex, which it appears that he is, and if he travels over the road, which many of them do, in the same route, then his route can be tracked. And if he's buying children, he'll be stopping at places where children are for sale. And it takes a lot of legwork and a lot of collaboration and partnering. But do you see the potential for justice and rescue? I just got a few minutes left, but I'm going to look to the future with you. We can rescue kids all day, and we want to, and adults. But if we don't end the demand, the ones that are rescued will be replaced. by a new batch. You know, the girls, prostituted girls we've talked to, busiest time of the year is coming up. We're going to have the most customers 4 days before Thanksgiving, first 2 or 3 days before and after Christmas. It's easy for money to slip out of accounts and not have to justify it, and everybody's festive and I'm feeling indulgent. Come buy one, get one. They run specials, sales. You have an opportunity. That time has not yet arrived. Do not delay, and justice will not be denied. When we move forward, for the past 3 months, I've been writing a letter every month to all of our city council members, to our leading law enforcement personnel in the surrounding areas, to the media, to the mayor, saying, this is how many girls for sale every week. By the way, love our city, wanted to let you know, love living here, thank you for what you do. Also, State Department says a community that tolerates prostitution tolerates child and human trafficking. You can't do anything about it if you don't know about it, and we're making sure they know about it. So we're doing this once a month for 3 months. October is my last month of sending it. November, we're issuing a very strong and very real demand for action. And our ultimate goal is in the demand in the Ozarks. And this is how we're going to push for it. Start arresting the guys who buy sex. But we want to create a reform school for Johns. So when they are arrested, and it is highly publicized, they have an option, because you know what? You relate, my friends, to the girls, to the victims, but what if it's your son who's buying the sex? Do you want to see mercy then? God does. And we want to see them have an opportunity to be restored. So we're going to have, what we're walking towards is a John school, a reform school. So when they are arrested, court mandated, you can go to prison or you can go to reform school. And that reform school will look like survivors coming in and saying, this is what it was like for me, what you were contributing to and what you were doing. And if they get arrested again, there's only one option. It is real, real, real. And it can be ended. Do you see the possibility in it being ended here? And then we take this and move forward and help another city, Northwest Arkansas, to end it. But you have to make it a priority. Traffickers wake up every day, and this is their livelihood, and they're committed. You have to be more committed. Will you be more committed? It has to have our resources. That's all I have. Thank you for bearing with me. I'm very blunt. Thank you for being patient.